Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Noah and I wanted to welcome all of you to another installment of Monologue Monday here on my YouTube channel. Monologue Monday. If you are a returning viewer, thank you so much for tuning back in, and as always, I hope you can take something away from this episode as well. With that being said, let's get into this installment of Monologue Monday. So for this episode of Monologue Monday, I wanted to discuss something that's been on my mind for some time now. I just haven't gotten around to making a video of myself really sharing any of my thoughts on it, and I'm sure you can kind of tell by the title of the video, but this is of course the idea of, do we or should we really have the right to privacy in certain aspects of our life? Now, when I say certain aspects of our life, I don't necessarily mean I think all of our lives should be recorded, broadcasted, and so on in the way that Truman had his life broadcasted in the Truman Show, the movie, a really great movie, by the way. But I don't think that's necessarily fair, right? So if you haven't seen the movie, the general idea is that there is an individual who has his life basically all recorded. Now, granted, his life is set up. It's not necessarily organic, but everything is recorded, audio, video, and so on. There's absolutely no privacy whatsoever, except for what's going on in his head. But everything else, everything he writes, everything he types, everything he says, every facial expression, and so on is documented. I do want to make it clear that I'm not a supporter of this Big Brother type of privacy invasion, right, where all of our movements and everything is just documented. But I had a thought somewhat recently regarding all of the kind of negative, I mean, negative is maybe not underscoring it enough, but all of the very horrendous things that kind of happen, in the United States, right? We've got school shootings, we've got just public displays of violence, right? We've got people driving cars through parades, we've got, assassinations and assassination attempts, and we've got, I mean, the list goes on and on and on, and of course that is only what gets released to the public, right? So if you were all seeing, right, and you knew every police report filed, and you knew everything that happened in the world or in the United States in every household, you'd probably be shocked, right, by the things that don't get reported, by the things that don't necessarily make it into the public light. But I had the thought of, what if rather than having kind of like a Big Brother type of privacy invasion, we had one where what we did digitally, right, on our mobile devices, on our computers, for example, was monitored more strictly. Now, I don't know what's all being monitored. I'm assuming if I start doing certain suspicious searches on my computer, it'll trigger something, right? I believe that is actually the case. But one thing that I've noticed after whenever there's a pretty bad news story, whenever there's a pretty bad news story that kind of gets out, obviously the investigation moves into effect, and one of the things that comes up are what the instigator, right, what the perpetrator was doing on their mobile devices, on their internet, all of their search history and so on. And one of the common things that I see with all of them is that they were, if you were to look at someone, some of these individuals' search history and their, what sites they're visiting and what's kind of going on in their life digitally, you could probably call out that they're going to be a suspect at some point in their life. I mean, some of the things that I've heard, it's kind of like a glaring indicator that they're going to do something suspicious at some point in the near future. And this, of course, really got me thinking as to, what if we, when I say we, not necessarily me, but a higher power, right, the government and so on in a society, was more involved with what people do digitally, to the point where it's not just a red flag that might appear on my IP address or so, on my device. Like I said, I'm not I don't work in cybersecurity or any system admin or anything like that, so I don't know everything when it comes to what's being looked at, what's important to the government, and all of those types of things. But I feel like there is a decent amount that we can articulate from pretty suspect people, right? Bad people. If we were looking at, I say we again, but not necessarily me, we're looking or paying close attention to what people were looking at, what type of character people had with their digital footprint. And the reason, of course, that I say this is because I do feel like if we were paying more attention to what people were looking up, right, and it was very closely monitored, we would be able to kind of catch a lot of these things ahead of time, right? We could kind of foresee some potential threats that that certain individuals might pose to the general public. This kind of reminds me of a quote from one of my favorite movie series that are out there, which is Harry Potter. But there, as much as I dislike this character, there is something that they say that kind of does make sense, right? And this, of course, is the quote from Dolores Umbridge. When she says, "You have nothing to fear if you have nothing to hide," and I as much as, like I said, I don't like that her character in the movies, I do believe that this is somewhat true. Where I am a proponent of people having personal privacy about their medical thing, all of that stuff, right? That doesn't benefit anybody from certain people knowing it. But there are certain things, right? Like someone's search history, if they're looking up how to make bombs or something like that, right? Where maybe it might benefit if it was, that search history, right? That their ID was kind of circulated within a certain department to kind of keep an eye on, or maybe check in on with the family, or something like that, right? I definitely do believe that, the more people want to hide, I feel like the more suspect they might be. Now, I, you know, you can come look at my YouTube video history, right? My like what I'm looking up. I don't, it's going to be pretty normal, I guess, right? So that's just me, but I know there are quite a few individuals out there who don't want anything looked at. And the question does become, is it why is that, right? I'm not saying that the whole world needs to see what someone's search history is necessarily, but I think a select group, select department, might benefit from seeing this kind of data, right? To try to benefit the rest of society as a whole by trying to track potential people that are potentially going to be dangerous in the near future, sometimes even in the far future as well. So like I said, at this point I don't know what all is being looked at and what it's being used for, but I do know that a lot of these incidents, these bad incidents that we hear about within the news, and sometimes they don't even make it into the news. There is a lot of there's breadcrumbs, right, that kind of lead up into this heinous event, right? And it's that they talk about it all the time in the news. Once they get a hold of some of their digital media and so on, it's a pretty glaring indicator that these individuals, pardon me, were going to do something bad at some point. But by then it's too late, right? But of course, it does really make me wonder if there will be a point in my life, at least, where the government or whoever is really in charge is going to come out and say everything that you do online that's picked up on cameras, in the public and so on, is going to be tracked and used for this and used for that to try to make the cities, societies, countries a better place. It does really make me think if that is going to be a reality at some point in time. And of course, I do think that there are people do have a right to have a certain amount of privacy, right? There's certain things that we don't necessarily want the world to know about, but there are quite a few things that I think are okay for a select group of people to know about, who are really trying to get ahead of a lot of these really bad things that take place within communities. Because at the end of the day, I feel like that privacy, them having complete privacy isn't worth the trade-off of sometimes killings that mass killings that can take place. I don't think that toss-up is necessarily worth it. But there you go. Those are a few of my thoughts on the idea of digital and personal privacy that we have here in the United States. But as always, I want to hear from the viewers as well. What are your thoughts on this idea, right? Should we have complete privacy over everything, or should it be something where we kind of meet in the middle, where there are certain things that obviously will remain confidential, but there's quite a few things that will be tracked as well to try to make our society a safer and better place as a whole? If you have any thoughts on this, please let me know in the comment section below. And of course, as always, if you've stuck along this far in the video, I want to thank you so much for your time, and I hope to see you again sometime soon.